For generations, women have been seen as kinder, gentler, and more nurturing than men. Rightly or wrongly. That might be why when we think of serial killers, we think of men. But to think that all serial killers are men is absolutely wrong. It's also wrong to think that all female killers rely on poison, that they don't like to get their hands bloody, or that they confine their killing only to their families. Some certainly do. But others? Well, let's just say there's more than one female axe murder out there, and there's also a whole lot of creativity when it comes to modus operandi. Even though they don't seem to get as much media attention, the world is full of bloodthirsty women, and today, we're taking a look at history's most notorious female serial killers. Cianciulli took the lives of Faustina Setti, Francesca Soavi, and Virginia Cacioppo, an ex-soprano who spent her days telling people how good her life was when she was a soprano. But, what did all these women have in common? Cianciulli only wanted their money and felt like if they disappeared, no one would ever look for them. She worked as the town's psychic and palm reader, so she knew the secrets of these women's hearts. With the help of some psychological manipulation, she was able to persuade the women to leave town without telling anyone where they were going. In some cases, she even persuaded them to write letters ahead of time to mail upon arriving. These letters were instead sent by Cianciulli. The bodies were dissolved in caustic soda and the sludge was poured into a cesspool. While this all sounds very gruesome, there is special emphasis on the word claimed. While it is true that she killed these 3 women, the rest is not so black and white. Many of what is known in the true crime community was written by Cianciulli herself in her 700-plus page memoir titled, Confessions of a Bitter Soul. Leonarda was born on 15th of October 1893. As a result of pregnancy due to rape. This accounts for the reason why her mother didn't love her, and was never been good to her. Her mother had to marry the man who raped her. The emotional neglect that Leonarda experienced at the hands of her mother. She had already made 2 suicide attempts before she married the older Raffaele Panzardi in 1917. In 1914, Leonarda Cianciulli married Raffaele Panzardi, a registry office clerk. Her parents were against their marriage and didn't approve of the marriage, as they have already planned her to marry another man. On the outside, Leonarda Cianciulli was a sweet little lady who was friends with her neighbors and baked delicious tea cakes, but hiding behind that mask was the soul of a murderer who believed in the magical properties of human sacrifice. Perhaps it was her mother's curse in 1917, when she married a man of whom her family disapproved. It may have been her criminal mind blossoming into murder. Or a mother's instinct to protect a beloved son. Something made Leonarda Cianciulli, the first known Italian female serial killer, chop up bodies to make soap and tea cakes gifts for family and neighbors. And now, Leonarda believed that her mother had cursed her and nothing good can happen in her life. By going against her parents' wish, she was no longer welcome to stay in the family home, leaving no choice but to move with her husband in Lauria. Unfortunately, the couple's honeymoon didn't last long, as the law sought justice when Leonarda was charged for fraud and sent to prison in 1927. The couple moved once again as soon as Leonarda was released. They decided to move the family to Lacedonia, a commune which is presently situated in the province of Avellino, Italy. They were looking for a fresh start, but tragedy and misery followed them here as well. In 1930, their house was destroyed in an earthquake. Close to being destitute, the family moved again, this time to Correggio, a town and commune in the province of Reggio Emilia, Italy. It was in Correggio that the family began to gain some amount of financial security. Cianciulli opened a small soap shop. She was a well-respected member of the community and her shop was quite popular. Here, Leonarda opened a popular soap shop. She also told fortunes and hypnotized clients, claiming to have special powers to help make their dreams come true. She was well liked and respected in Reggio Emilia. Sometimes an awful smell emanated from her kitchen, but it never lasted long. Her neighbors knew she was quite superstitious, but they told one another that this was due to her tragic history. Over the years, she had 17 pregnancies, out of which 3 ended in miscarriages. 10 of her children died in childhood. She became overly protective of the 4 that survived. She was an extremely superstitious woman who believed in fortune-telling, astrology, and palm reading. Her fear of losing more children was inflamed by a conversation she had had with a fortune-teller years earlier before she even got married. The fortune-teller warned her, saying, "In your right hand I see prison, in your left a criminal asylum." Cianciulli seems to have taken these warnings very much to heart, that she would get married and have children. Then, they would all die young. Cianciulli was very protective of her remaining 4 children, but was also very superstitious, and sought the wisdom of a gypsy. This gypsy was supposedly a gift palmer reader. Dwelling on her mother's alleged curse, and the Romani fortune-teller's prediction, Leonarda Cianciulli became deeply superstitious. They had begun recruiting for their military, and Giuseppe Panzardi, Cianciulli's eldest son, had been designated to be part of the Italian army. This guy was her favorite child, and she soon became afraid for his safety. Determined to protect him at all costs, she decided the only way to do it was by human sacrifice. It's actually unclear where the heck she got her idea to sacrifice humans in order to save her son from dying in World War II. The Roman Catholicism prevalent in Italy during her time forbade human sacrifice as an abomination before God. Additionally, there's no known Romani belief or superstition that embraces human sacrifice. But regardless of where she got her idea, Cianciulli would go on to murder 3 women before she was caught. When Leonarda's favorite son joined the Italian army, she was more determined than ever to protect him. She was a fortune-teller herself, and had garnered favorable reputation as such. All 3 of her victims were her clients who had come to her seeking help. Faustina Setti was a middle-aged unmarried woman who was looking for a husband. During her visit, she told her that there was a suitable partner for her in Pola, now Croatia, but instructed her not to tell anyone anything about it. Setti was also told to write letters and postcards, so they could be sent back to her relatives and friends after she got to Pola. On the day of her departure, she came to bid goodbye to Cianciulli, who gave her drugged wine to drink. After she had fallen unconscious, Cianciulli murdered her with an axe, pulled her body into a closet, and hacked it into 9 pieces. She also collected the blood into a basin. She threw the pieces into a pot, added 7 kilos of caustic soda, and stirred until the mixture had turned into a thick, dark mush. She then poured it into several buckets and disposed of it in a nearby septic tank. As for the blood in the basin, she let it coagulate before drying it in an oven, grinding it, and mixing it with flour, sugar, chocolate, milk, eggs, and margarine to make lots of tea cakes. She gave many of these to visiting women and the rest were eaten by her son and herself. However, Cianciulli got Setti's life savings as the payment for her services. It was about 30,000 lire. Her second victim's name was Francesca Soavi, with a very similar story. Cianciulli told her she could help her go away, but this time to a school job in another town, and that she should write postcards to say her goodbyes. When Francesca returned a second time to pay her 3,000 lire for her help, Cianciulli drugged and killed her with an axe, then cooked her body in a large pot in the kitchen. Leonarda may have financially benefited from the murders. She collected around 30,000 lire, total, about $4,900 in today's US currency. Opera singer Virginia Cacioppo's good friend Leonarda promised Virginia work as a secretary for an impresario in Florence. Virginia could not believe her luck. At 53, here was a chance to turn her memories of glory and life of poverty. She was indebted to Leonarda. But Virginia could not keep her mouth closed, so several friends understood Virginia was about to embark on an adventure. Courtesy kindly Leonarda Cianciulli, the soap maker and medium extraordinaire. On September 30, 1940, she went to see Leonarda for one last chance to express her gratitude, and they toasted with wine. At her 1946 trial, Leonarda explained chubby Virginia's fate. Leonarda included that she particularly enjoyed consuming her third victim, going on to describe that she ended up in the pot like the other two. Her flesh was fat and white, When it had melted, I added a bottle of cologne, and after a long time on the boil, I was able to make some most acceptable creamy soap. I gave bars to neighbors and acquaintances. The cakes, too, were better. That woman was really sweet. This time, Leonarda received about 50,000 lira, jewelry, and public bonds. She raided Virginia's house of valuables, and then sold or gifted the victims clothing, shoes, and jewelry. And she gave her neighbors gifts of the handmade soap. With the disappearance of 3 women, questions began to arise in the town. Virginia's sister-in-law was particularly worried and needed some answers to where she was. When the sister-in-law asked around, she was told that Virginia was last spotted entering the house of Leonarda Cianciulli. Authorities were involved, and in no time police arrested Leonarda Cianciulli. Once in custody, Leonarda was quick to confess for murders, once discovering that police had also arrested his son, Giuseppe, as a possible accomplice. Because of the unusual circumstances of the case, many flocked to watch the trial unravel in court. Leonarda was trialed for murder in Reggio Emilia in 1946 and remained unrepentant, going so far to correct the official account while on the stand. She was found guilty of her crimes and was sentenced to 30 years in prison and 3 years in a criminal asylum. Still, it was difficult to believe this woman could dissect a corpse so quickly and without assistance. So the attorneys, judges, and police took Leonarda to the morgue. She demonstrated her talent by dissecting a corpse into 9 pieces under 12 minutes. Her son also went to trial but was acquitted. Both Raffaele and Giuseppe always claimed innocence of Leonarda's illegal activities. Giuseppe had mailed cards and letters for her while he was on a trip in Pola, and he had tossed some wrapped bones into a river. But he had no idea how these actions connected to her crimes. Her family hugged her tight after the sentencing. On October 15, 1970, Cianciulli passed away in the women's criminal asylum in Pozzuoli, after suffering from cerebral apoplexy for a prolonged period. She was 76 years old. Many of the artifacts from the case, including the pot she used to boil her victims in, made their way to the Criminological Museum in Rome, where they are currently displayed. There have been several adaptations of her story, both on stage and in films. In 1979, a play named Love and Magic in Mama's Kitchen was produced by Lena Wertmuller at the Spoleto Festival. It narrated Cianciulli's life in a darkly comedic tone. In Mauro Bolognini's 1977 directorial venture, Gran Boleto, American actress Shelley Winters portrayed Cianciulli.